Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Um, Thank you, and good to see all of you over here. You are all here because across the NAB show, because the traditional media playbook is being rewritten at this very moment. And we're seeing that across the board, across the show. And all of you as leaders of in the media space in this room, we have all, over many years of me attending NAB, we've all perfected the art of video delivery to consumers. But also at the same time, we all have realized that more video doesn't mean more loyalty. So just spending more and more on the existing new video doesn't bring you more loyalty from the consumers. You need to do something fundamentally different. And that's why we are all sitting here. The session is called Personalized Audience Experiences with Multimodal Generative AI. But also on this panel, it's by no accident, we've got one of the leading content creation tools in the form of AVID, and then one of the leading brands for creating content from Fremantle joining Dailymotion. Because I think one thing we fundamentally believe, going forward, the audience experience doesn't happen after the edit suite. It happens while you're creating the content and while you're looking into the archive to tell new stories from existing content. So thank you so much for all of you for joining me here. And I think just a question to start with is AI has been used for the longest period of time in the media space to identify objects like cars and trucks and the people. But also in the last few years, we have seen the advent of multimodality of AI, which understands not just people, but certain actions or emotions. So what was the most amazing experience you have seen over the last year and a half when you talk about the capabilities that AI bring to your own businesses? Guillaume, I'll start with you and then Kevin and Carl.
Yeah, I think to your point, I mean, for years, we've sort of had tooling in and around AI and around object detection, facial recognition, things to help you sort through the media. But in terms of contextualizing that in an actual editorial experience, that's really been missing the intent. And I think we're finally seeing the maturity. And I think, quite honestly, as someone who's also attended NAB for many years, we're finally seeing the maturity of AI into a tool in the workflow. And it's becoming a tool in the workflow because it understands the contextualized experience, and it can really guide the editor from a creative standpoint to understand what footage is relevant, what footage is not relevant, in terms of the contextualization of the cut and the intent that they're trying to do in the editorial experience.
Yeah, and same for you, Kevin. Yeah.
Very similarly, actually. Up until now, and still relatively recently, we've had the ability to create transcripts from video and find pieces of dialogue going on in a timeline or an asset. But that will only capture so much. So what we can really do now with multimodal AI solutions is catch that sideways glance, search on an emotion, or say, for example, for an argument. We do an awful lot of reality TV, and most of that is unscripted arguments. So that's very useful too. And also it does it in an entirely natural way. So the point of getting to adoption is to do that in as friction-free way as possible, fitting in with existing workflow. So within your AVID timeline makes a huge difference to us making shows.
Carl?
Yeah, I think very similar for us. I think a good example is traditional tagging would give you something, like basketball, NBA, Knicks highlights. And context over content for us is understanding why someone's watching that Knicks, those Knicks highlights. One user could be looking at tactical analysis. So, baskets, assists, fouls, things like that. While another user could be, looking into player reactions, fan celebration, comebacks. And so it's really helping us understand, the difference between those two users. So not just what's in a video, but why someone's watching it.
Yeah, I think that the context over content, I think, is highly relevant, and especially going forward, because we all might be watching similar videos, but the context or the reason we are watching the video is different, and adapting that is increasingly important. And I think Maybe next, Guillaume, I'll come with you. I think you guys have announced certain new things, new products, new tools at the NAB show, where you are at starting a journey on using AI into your products and offering to your customers. So maybe take some time and explain to the audiences what you have announced and where directionally you think Avid product portfolio is going to go in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're introducing 2 new products this year with Avid Content Core, which is a sort of an evolution of MAM and PAM, but with the contextualization of semantic AI and multimodal AI built into that. And that's really the expansion of the metadata experience, but also the expansion of sort of metadata as a through line throughout the ROI process of media creation too. So I think what we're really trying to do with that tool is tie back from the ROI and the publish endpoint and the distribution endpoint of what that media is, and tie that all the way back into your point, into the editorial process, into decision making, into AI, into content reuse in the editorial process. And we're driving that through semantic AI and through the use of Gemini and Vertex AI in that application. And the other big point that we're making here too, and the other big product we're showing, is Gemini in the media composer experience, which is not just about slapping generative AI into the editor. It's about giving the editor full control over the generative AI, all of that tooling to really expand, sort of the artistic intent and what they can do inside of that tool, and give them full capabilities into the Avid timeline, full contextualization into the metadata, full versioning in terms of color pipeline, even when that's generated media, and ultimately also delineating between what is generated media versus what is authentic and created media. So it's those 2 tools we're really hoping to sort of drive the efficiency and drive the creative and the artistic experience even further through the use of multimodal AI in both those tools.
Yeah, I think it's, and this is a trend we are seeing across, like bringing AI to the editors rather than bringing editors to the AI, which always creates a little bit of it's a new skill set in many cases. But coming to you, Kevin, I think you across the organization, Fremantle, 50 plus years of archive that you have got across scripted and unscripted shows. How do you think you're also starting a journey? You have been on a journey in some ways across the whole, your content supply chain. So yeah, give everyone a little bit of idea where you are using AI right now and where directionally you think it can make a difference to Fremantle's business going forward.
Sure. So, in this case, we have, as you say, many, many decades worth of content, and that's really just has been sitting on tapes, in sometimes on-premises storage, sometimes in the cloud, but about several 100,000 hours worth of content we could be using, exploiting, bringing back to an audience. And what these kind of tools allow us to do is to get over the huge barrier to managing and understanding that archive. If you don't have to spend thousands of hours labeling content, finding it, adhering to a specific schema, then that friction goes away, and you can then use it within the context you have. So you want to grab a clip that emphasizes a particular moment in a story from something in a useful way, create whole new formats. We can do that because it's much less administratively complex at a price point that makes sense on all kinds of distribution platforms. And that really wasn't possible before.
And also, I think, and even directionally, maybe a little bit talking about how you see in the future, how this is going to affect or help Fremantle editors and creators tell new stories. Do you see a way, like, understanding not what's there in the archive is one part of it, but also for the new content that is coming in, right, in some ways. So how do you see that actually impact of AI in content creation?
Sure, a huge impact in this across the whole life cycle of making content. But if we just focus on one example, so I can let Carl speak too, is where we have shows that generate many thousands of hours of rushes, and we have to make sense of those to get things live. I'll take an example. Any of the Got Talent shows that go on around the world, we have to produce after every set of contestant actions or rehearsals or interviews or whatever, a coherent tape that allows us to whittle that huge audience of contestants down. with these new tools, with the tools of Ford and Vertex AI, we actually use AVID on those shows. So Content Core will be super helpful for this. We're able to do that and generate those rushes much, much quicker. And that allows the edit team, the production team, to be focusing on the stories, not on the burden of trying to find these clips.
Yeah, and they focus on the creative process. And Carl, I think you alluded to it while you were introducing the work with Dailymotion, but again, a little bit on your services are being bombarded with millions of hours of user generated and professional content, and you are offering it to audiences globally. So where do you see right now the impact of AI across the workflow? What you're doing, you talked a little bit about the semantic search, but also directionally, where else do you see some of the role that AI could play in your business?
Yeah, so there's a couple of areas where it's really important. Anything that helps us build a better recommendation engine, which is what we're doing on top of Google Cloud in a multimodal way, right? Like audio, text, video, creates a better user experience for Dailymotion. Knowing that people search in very kind of ambiguous human ways, we're trying to understand what they're searching for, like, is in that emotion, and then match that to our library and surface content using engagement signals like click-through rate or watch time. And so what we're taking from that is kind of within our ecosystem. It's like AI classifiers that understand consumption patterns. It's our moderation stack, so like visual analysis from AI, and we're kind of like rebuilding it, repurposing it for search specifically. And then the other side of that is going back to this kind of like mood and vibe detection. All of this kind of as the foundation for like the three core pillars of our business, which is watchability, safety. So ensuring that we're not like surfacing not safe for work content. And then, freshness as well, something that's new in the library. On the other end of it, like real quick, as we're bringing our data to market to help, train generative models, having an understanding of a 20-year-old catalog, is a fairly large lift. And, the way that AI models are being trained today is very different from a couple of years ago when, hyperscalers and the AI labs were licensing content at scale, in more of a corpus matter, just taking, raw footage and building foundational models from there. The asks now are getting much more prescriptive. Can you show me a video of hand motions or someone specifically drinking coffee? Can I see, football, but can it be a goal and can it be different angles from that goal? And so light processing of our library helps us understand, better classification, better metadata, and then that deep understanding of our library, helping us get down to the scene level so we can query, curate, and deliver from our library to meet more prescriptive needs.
Oh, that's amazing, because I think it's AI in some ways also helped you create a new revenue stream in some ways beyond just offering a streaming platform for consumers. But I think it's starting with you, Carl, again. I think coming on the other side, I think you all have alluded to it, like how AI is simplifying the content creation process and speeding it up. I'm guessing for all three of you, localization, globalization of content is increasingly important. And I think, Carl, you mentioned some things also about the compliance, the safety, moderation effects of it when you're talking about user-generated content. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using AI in bringing more content to audiences globally?
Yeah, there's a couple of really interesting ways that we're doing it. I think one very interesting way is this cross-language discovery. So, a French user might be watching minimalistic do-it-yourself content. Like, how do I change a tire? How do I fix my sink? And it's really like the visual experience that's important for them. What our cross-language discovery is doing is we'll surface a video, not just in French, but maybe in English or Spanish, because what the person's really trying to get out of that is the process and the hand movement. The language isn't as important. They're not watching like a TV show. So that's one way. Another way is that we're building, end-to-end agentic workflows for our creator base. So Dailymotion evolving as a company, we're trying to really become a positive video platform, almost like a Discord meets TikTok. And what we want to do is provide our creators with the tools to understand how their content is being consumed and by who, develop like content creation plans, and then ultimately optimize their distribution. So they, as a creator, can focus on creativity, not just the optimization itself.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. And I think from Kevin, from your point of view, I think you alluded to some of it, like, some of these from a production point of view, some of these tools are changing the role of what a producer does in some ways. So where do you see the impact going forward on the role a producer does now, and how it's going to evolve over the next few years when they get, because I imagine AI is going to give them some of these superpowers to be able to do the jobs much faster in certain cases. So where do you see it going?
Well, we're already seeing, actually this, if you to say 2026 is definitely the year of real production rather than experimentation. And so what we're seeing are what might have been careful delineation of where a particular function happens in the pipeline, like development where you've got writers' rooms and scripts being written, and then you've got the actual production itself behind the camera, the generation of the content, then into post-production, then into distribution. That's all blurring. So to give you an example, is sitting in a writer's room for a particular drama that will be coming out in September, a big reboot, and we had editors in there and post-production supervisors and that kind of thing. And they're working with the writers to work out what's possible, because AI there is not, it's not about saving money. It's actually creating new possibilities which might not be possible before. To give you an example, someone said, "Can I blow up an oil rig?" Well, the answer is yes, if you're using AI, and you can do that at a cost that makes sense. Otherwise it isn't. And so it's creating new storytelling possibilities, and everyone's in different parts of the production pipeline, whereas, which is very exciting for all of the players involved.
No, it's amazing. An amazing example also is like creating no gap between imagination and creativity and what you can actually do. And literally some of these AI tools are enabling to do that. Coming to you, Guillaume, I think one thing is that you talked a little bit about the relationship between editor and AI. How do you think that relationship is changing now, and what is the impact of AI and role of editor? How that changes going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, sort of further on Kevin's point, we're seeing AI come into the actual workflows this year in terms of the actual execution, including the editor workflow, this year. I mean, I see AI as a tremendous enablement tool. One is to, as we were discussing before, sort of reduce some of the repetitive tasks in the editorial workflow and focus more on the creative content. It's also, blurring the lines. It's doing this, AI is doing this in the software development lifecycle too. It's blurring the lines between planning and execution and vision and execution. So, which is surfacing itself as just another form of actually more effective communication in the editorial experience. So, I think there'll always be a human in the loop. We want to see it continue to be an assistive and enablement tool in an editorial platform itself. sidetrack here. I spent a long time in mortgage processing and another life in media, and we determined that human in the loop was important in that. So I think we're not going to get away from human in the loop, obviously, in an editorial and creative experience. But I think we're seeing an expansion and a blurring of the lines between, like I said, vision and execution, and what you can do in the editorial surface itself with AI to really further that vision along.
Yeah, I think one thing, at least from our learning, and all three of you alluded to it, sometimes we work with customers who try to take an existing media supply chain and try to insert AI into it. Yes, that will give you some level of efficiency, but also sometimes you take a step back, is like Kevin, you were alluding to, like, maybe there is a completely new way of telling news stories, or you can actually tell news stories with the existing content you have. So, yeah, I think, yes, of course, sometimes it helps to start with the supply chain, but sometimes taking a step back, thinking, understanding and imagining what level of creativity AI can bring to your business. So yeah, I think one last question, and of course we are on a panel, so I have to ask forward-leaning questions. So over, I would say, let's say, next 2 years, what is where do you think the best return on investment from AI is going to come from AVID, not just for AVID, but actually for your customers? And then I'll ask a similar question to you, both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of our customers are asking for that overview of the media pipeline and the metadata through line for it. I mean, I think we're at a inflection point in the overall media space in terms of needing to increase that ROI and increase the ROI on products. And I think AI is a big way that we drive both efficiencies in the workflow itself to get there, but also we drive, what is the value of content overall? What is the value of that published asset and content? And sort of to Kevin's point, as we've ingested more and more media over time, we have sort of not taken a step back and said, okay, well, what is the true value of the media that we're ingesting? How can we maybe do this differently? So I think we're really going to be invested in the whole media pipeline and also informing greater degrees of AI through the metadata pipeline, so we have more of a through line in the overall sort of media supply chain.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. And I think that by itself is simplifying the from an idea to the final output, simplifying that process is increasingly important. Kevin, from your point of view, you have many initiatives across the business using AI to simplify the organization and also simplify the creation process. So where do you think over the next couple of years you're going to get maximum impact of AI?
Well, I could be quite specific about this one because we're doing this analysis all the time. Where are we going to invest the resources we have to build the solutions that we need to deliver? And there's probably 3 areas. One is the generation of video, and this is to augment and enhance the stories that we have with live video. So we very uniquely look at combining live and generative video. The second one is in on-screen graphics and effects, the VFX industry, so we can have a tremendous effect on being able to do much more. This is not about doing less for less. This is about doing more for less. And then the third one is removing a lot of the administrative headache of producing film and TV content. It could be from production processes like filling in music rights submission forms to the administration of where you move contestants around the reality show or whatever. All of that stuff gets much, much easier. And that enables people to spend more of their time creating, as I've said before. That's the real thing for us. It starts and ends with a human, and we're about getting more creativity, getting more shows, getting more distribution methods like Dailymotion, for example, that make more sense for us. High value content everywhere. So that's what I would say.
Thanks for that. And I think, Carl, from your point of view, because also you have been on an AI journey for quite so many years, as Dailymotion has been. But also, I think, it'll be good to hear what you see in the next couple of years, because also part of the challenge I think we've been working with you to solve, and AI is now enabling that across this, is like multi-format delivery. So all video doesn't need to be horizontal. There's a lot of demand for vertical videos. It used to be cumbersome, time-consuming process. Now they're different tools as an example. So yeah, just talk a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. Both professional and personal. I was actually just having this conversation with a couple of friends yesterday. Remember when you could get to the end of your Instagram feed? Like it would actually say you've consumed all of the content. And that's one way that Dailymotion is evolving as we become more of a community-based platform. And so we want to create these experiences that feel more like intuitive rather than algorithmic in a sense. And what we're doing there is create like one product we're building is called Cornerstones. And so if you're the fan of a specific football club or like a type of craft or hobbies, you can join these communities and not just find content that ties into those categories. You can find creators who are very specifically tied to those categories. You can join discussions and provide comments on videos. And so what we're really looking to do is, create this social kind of engagement with our viewers, to connect in a community sense. So as opposed to just this kind of like isolated doom scroll that people are in, create a positive environment around, our content within a community. And so as I think like, how will people think about Dailymotion in a couple of years? It goes from, wow, I really love this video to, wow, I really love how this platform, makes me feel. And I think it's almost like as people start to engage with like, agentic therapists and things like that, it's more so like, let's leverage AI to understand that mood, that intent that we were discussing before, find additional content, but also engage in a much more community sense. And us as like a French-based company, it's part of our ethos and our culture as well.
That is actually amazing to hear that it's AI is not just all across the chain. You're not just focusing on creating AI slop as some people are talking about, but using AI to assist and help create high value content, high value stories that our audiences are looking forward to. No, thank you, all three of you, so much. And I think hopefully through this panel, you would have heard many real life experiences of how some of the leading companies are using AI to redefine and actually in their own way, actually helping create unique audience experiences. So we'll be hanging around after this panel for a few minutes. If you have any questions, thank you so much for joining us for this panel.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.